Hello everyone, my name is Lena and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, this is going to be a TXT timeline video, which is a continuation of my Everything in the TXT Universe Explained video series, which if you haven't seen, you can click the card or it's in the description below. So we are going to be covering quite a lot today, and the only way that I could think to do this that isn't super confusing is on an actual physical timeline, so that's what you're looking at right here. The main line right in the middle here is going to be our main timeline, so anything that is the major music videos that are marked with the TXT Universe logo, etc. And the line on top here is our alternate timeline, so anything not marked with the TU logo is in this alternate timeline, but I'll get more into it as we go. I do want to mention the fact that none of this is solid and it could move around. I could be wrong, after all, but this is all just part of a theory, so please don't come at me if I'm wrong. I'll just make an update, it's fine. So let's get started. First up is Nap of a Star. This should be pretty obvious for most people. The beginning of the Nap of the Star music video shows them as kids, and this is when they make the promise to the star. This promise is most likely for them to remain together. Likewise, the Eternally music video, when Subin goes back in time, it probably takes place on or just slightly after the events of Nap of a Star. This also takes place at a Starlight Festival, which is important because of something I will mention towards the end of this timeline. And this is where an older Subin actually gets the magic die. And if you're a little bit confused about this, I recommend taking a look at my Eternally Explained video because I do talk about it a lot there. This is right before a time skip. Next is, of course, the rest of the Nap of the Star music video. I do think the whole music video happens and kind of symbolizes their meeting again as teenagers and sort of finding each other. And when I go into the alternate storyline, which I will do afterwards, you'll see how this ties into some of the other themes as well. Next comes the beginning and ending of Eternally. So there's a lot of time travel in the Eternally music video, but the beginning and end both take place in the practice room, and I do think that this happens sometime after they've met and became friends, but before many of the other events. I did want to note that it does seem like the boys are trainees of some sort, perhaps idol trainees. After all, they are in a practice room, and this seems to be most prevalent in the main timeline and less so in the alternate timeline. I do think they're high schoolers in both, but in the main timeline it does seem to be highlighted a lot more. Likewise, after this point we see the Eternity concept trailer. This happens largely in Subin's mind and is probably a dream of some sort, but it highlights his separation from the other members, so it would have happened at a similar time as the Eternally music video. Next we have Magic Island. If Eternally was the start of the Magic Island must happen after Eternally. You'll see when I go over the alternate timeline, but a lot of the concept photos do seem to fill in the gaps between Eternally and Magic Island here. Speaking of filling in the gaps, there's also the animations that they have at their Welcome Back shows. I do think that these expand on the story and show it from a more emotional standpoint. The Welcome Back show for the Eternity album has all of them in order towards the end, so I really recommend watching them if you have the time and are interested. It's just between their performances, and it starts with Crown. As I mentioned, this one here though does have them literally going on a train to a magical place, so this would be in tandem with Magic Island. In Magic Island, they obviously get to the island and start fooling around. I do think there was a bit of a rewind that happened, so we had them going back in time and creating an alternate timeline where they were happy and there was no fire, and then one where the fire did happen, which is our main timeline. You'll see when I go over the alternate timeline that this does connect to Runaway. Likewise, the animation showing the main timeline once again has their train literally collapsing after a bunch of fire, and it really represents their friendship here, I think, as well. And this would signal the end of Magic Island. Next, I'm placing Pomgyu's scene with the door from Eternally here. I know that this is a future vision of his, but I do think it happens sometime after Magic Island. After all, they do have to go back and find the magic book, but they're still having some problems with their friendship at this point, so him fighting someone who may or may not be another member would likely come sometime after Magic Island when their friendship seems to start to fall apart. Next is the stadium scene in the beginning of the Eternally music video. I do think it's possible that the Pumgyu scene would be after this, however, I do think it's more likely to come before it, simply because it seems like they're fighting over the book and then towards the end they're okay with the book. But theoretically it's possible that it happens somewhere afterwards, assuming that Yeonjun's bad ending doesn't happen, which we hope it doesn't happen. But I do think it starts to signal the start of the end of their timelines. This might be before the final boss scene, for example, which I'll get to in a minute. Likewise, the scene right after this has to be Yeonjun's scene in Eternally. He sees himself just as Subin did at the beginning, which means it immediately follows these events. This could be also the moment in time where Yeonjun makes a contract with the cat, and I have a theory that the cat can kind of just go wherever in time, which means it might be trying to collect a price from Yeonjun even in the past, such as with the cat in Nap of a Star. This is just a theory though, it's not factual, so take that as you will. If that is the case, then the cat's timeline is totally messed up and is not linear in the slightest. Speaking of the cat, this is where I am placing Taeyeon's Eternally scene. I could actually see this in a couple different places. It could also be somewhere before this, but I do think that these are all offshoots of just bad endings or bad timelines. So in this timeline, Yeonjun ends up dead yet again. This will not lead to their good ending, but it is sort of just a branch of their current timeline. Also note that it looks like the cat could have killed him, similar to in Nap of a Star, so this could be Yeonjun paying his price. Next, I'm placing Kai's scene from Eternally, simply because I am not entirely sure if it even happens rooted in reality. It seems to be pretty symbolic, so I'm gonna place it down here. I do think thematically he is separated from his friends at this point, which would make sense since they're just branching off of different bad timelines. They're sort of stuck before the proper conclusion of their story. I'm guessing we're gonna see a lot of these bad timelines in future music videos before we finally hit the ending. I don't think that we'll see a good ending anytime soon. So what is the proper conclusion of their story? Well, I do think everyone should just go and read all of the lyrics of Can't We Just Leave the Monster Alive. Let's just look at these lyrics together, shall we? A maze of darkness with tangled bushes. The forest that I had already passed through. It's been repeating over and over again. The ending that came before my eyes. Oh, stop for a moment. The ending is given. Can you put it off for a while? I'm going to go back. This part is talking about the forest that we've already seen in Magic Island. It's literally saying they're repeating it over and over again, and the ending, Yeonjun dying, is a given. This song is about them putting it off, of course, as in they don't want to experience that ending. Now the final boss. I put the feeling of fear behind me. I want to enjoy this world more. Now, ride the dragon, fly around. The hidden Easter egg. Yeah, baby, I'll find that. I do think the Easter egg part is a reference to Harry Potter. I just wanted to mention that because in the 4th Harry Potter, he finds a golden egg and he is fighting a dragon. But we also see a dragon in the TXT universe, and I do think that they have to befriend it or something like that to maybe get their good ending. It's hard to say exactly, but finally in the chorus, there is a line that says, "Now drop all your weapons and to the festival." First of all, I'm sorry, the festival? The Starlight Festival? This is the festival where they made their promise to the stars, so I wonder if they actually have to go back to that time again, or if they have to create maybe a new festival. Their quest is to find the star's song, and part of me thinks that might have something to do with the contract with the cat as well. I don't know, the cat's a mystery. So going to a festival and maybe finding another star song or something like that could be what they need to do. I don't know, maybe they need to make some new rules. I wonder if Subin rolling the dice has something to do with this as well. Like maybe a higher roll means a better timeline or better luck or something like that, because in D&D the higher that you roll, the better it is, and a natural 20 is the best possible outcome. And we see that it lands on a 19 in the Eternally music video, so I don't know, I just feel like the dice is going to be really important. I just don't know exactly how yet, but I am curious to know what you think about that. In the bridge, the lyrics here also talk about becoming adults. Do we have to break this stage to become adults? To do well? I want to be a boy forever. Oh, in the dark maze, in the twisted, tangled bushes. Oh, I even like the monster in the forest. So there's a lot here. First of all, the monster in the forest. It makes me think that maybe the monster in the forest is the cat, like that is their final boss and not the dragon, so maybe they were just going to the wrong final boss, I don't know. But this also shows their reluctance to move forward. They're hanging on to the last threads of their innocence and their childhood. and they certainly don't want to experience the grief of losing a friend. So I do think that this song brings us even closer to their conclusion, but is still not quite there. Anyways, I did want to talk a little bit about some of the other things that we see that are TU related. First is the questioning videos, which do seem to encompass the entirety of the timeline, so I'm going to drop it right here. It symbolically shows the beginning, the middle, and the end through just the flowers that are used and the placement of the flowers, and probably the animals that are being used as well in these videos. Next, I wanted to talk about the shadow segment in their 2019 MMA performance, because this seemed to show our entire timeline. First, it has them meeting as friends, and then Yeonjun being singled out, just like in the Nap of a Star music video. It shows him growing horns, and him essentially being kidnapped, which is, I think, representing the cat, and how essentially the cat is keeping him captive in that sense because of the contract. And then we have a big fight scene, and towards the end, they are all happy again, and his horn repairs itself. I think this symbolizes possibly one of the good endings, or at least thematically the entirety of the TXT universe storyline as we know it so far. So yes, that is the entirety of the main TXT storyline. But wait, we still have the alternate timeline. So just remember that all of this is up for interpretation, and things might change in the future, so if it does, I'll update that. The alternate timeline up here, this is going to be a little bit different, because this whole half right before Magic Island might coincide with the main storyline, as in it might actually be happening on the same timeline. I'm less certain about the alternate timeline than I am the main timeline, but I do think I have a pretty good idea about what's going on here, so let's look at that now. First is cat and dog. Now, cat and dog, I think, actually highlights the relationships between the boys as they found each other, and of course we see the actual cat appear, which is a testament to that cat appearing in Nap of a Star. So yeah, it does happen on the same sort of timeline, or slightly before Nap of a Star music video. Now, Can't You See Me I actually have placed in 2 different parts on this timeline, because I think there are 2 different places that it could be. If you've watched my Can't You See Me Explained video, you probably already know where the other place is, but I do think that it's possible Can't You See Me happens before everything. It's really hard to place because we don't have any of our future tells, such as the burn on Yeonjun's hand, which I will talk about in a bit, so the placement of this music video is really hard to determine. But I do think it's possible that Can't You See Me happened somewhere in this time between Magic Island and Cat and Dog. Next, we have the Sanctuary photos. I think this comes somewhere around the Eternally music video, because they're talking about many different ways to get to Magic Island, specifically Subin, and I think Puma kind of goes around here as well, since I do believe Puma is like their first time when they went to Magic Island. The song itself talks about freedom being taken away from you, so I think they go to Magic Island and kind of experience the like themes of Puma, where they are free for a little while, and this sort of sets the tone for them later being captured by the cat, for example, in Magic Island. Like I said, this is up for interpretation, but I do think Puma makes sense here. Next, we have a scene from the 2019 MMA performance. I do think this is sort of in tandem with maybe Puma, or slightly before, because it does have Yeonjun discovering magic, and at this point I also think that he discovers the way to get to Magic Island, since it has a lot of similarities to the way that Jungkook discovers the way to get to the magic shop in one of the VCRs for the 5th muster. This is also the point where they discover the magic circle for the first time, and this ties it very nicely to the main story, because we know there's a magic circle in the main story as well. The exact timings for all of these is a little bit dubious, but I do think they happen quite close to each other. And of course, as I mentioned, this all sort of leads to Magic Island, which is where the timeline splits into this scene. So this scene, they go back in time, and I think in the Runaway timeline, they end up leaving right after this, and so the fire doesn't actually happen. Instead, the fire follows them into Runaway, as we see here, so it's happening kind of along the same line. We know that Runaway has to happen after Magic Island, because the burn that Yeonjun gets in Magic Island is visible on his hand in the Runaway music video. I don't mean the cut, I mean this tiny little bird right here that he gets in Magic Island. I think it's possible that after this they go and break into the school, and this is where they discover the magical items, such as seen in the Runaway teaser. And since this is after the MMA 2019 scene, it makes sense that Zubin knows what he's drawing. It also probably ties into the Arcadia photos as well. It should be noted that the Arcadia photos mention October 32nd, which I've established probably has to do with both Magic Island and time travel, but we don't have a clear answer on that yet, and it is not the only time that it's mentioned, so I did just want to reiterate the fact that, yeah, October 32nd is a thing. And if you've seen my Can't You See Me explained video, you know that I placed Can't You See Me around this timeline as well, happening on the same time as the other things. So if we look at Can't You See Me, it's at the same time as the Runaway fire and the Magic Island fire, and it could kind of be drawn on its own line here as well, so you can imagine it on its own timeline, but we're just not sure. But I do wonder if it's more likely that it happened slightly after Runaway, and then the pre-sequel will lead into drama or something like that. I do, however, think that the fire at the end of Runaway does happen after everything, so it's its own fire and not related to the previous fires as well. As I'm watching this video back, as I'm editing it, it makes sense to me also that Can't You See Me could happen somewhere after Runaway because of the bear. We don't actually know what happens to the bear, but it makes sense if they finish Runaway and they burn down the door, and then after all of that, that's when Can't You See Me happens, which leads into drama, but that's just... Can't You See Me is a total mess. I have no idea where on the timeline it goes, and I'm really sorry because it's that one thing where I'm just like, it could go here, but it could go here, but it could go here, but... Now after this, I am preemptively going to be placing the drama music video here, and it could also go earlier, like before everything, but I'm placing it here largely because of the port album, which I'm also putting here. The port album has to come after Runaway because Taeyeon has the bear in Runaway, and to me drama just kind of looks like it could fit in with that. I also wanted to note, if you are watching this later, the drama music video has not yet come out at the time of recording, so keep that in mind. This is possibly going to change, but I wanted to place it just in case. And finally, at the end of the timeline, I'm placing the Starboard album. Now, it is dated October 32nd on these albums, but it is sort of like a dream of their future, or they want it to be the future, so I'm placing it towards the end, although it might not have a specific placement in the end. Wow, this is a mess. But I hope that this video at least helped put this in the right order for you, or at least an order that sort of makes a little bit more sense. And yeah, like I said, it's very confusing. As you can see, even I don't have a 100% sure version of this timeline right now. I can't wait till we have more information so that I can be a little bit more sure, and of course I will do an update on the timeline when the time comes. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this and that it was helpful to you. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and make sure that you subscribe so that you are notified every single time that I post a video. As it is, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay sunny. Bye. Is my head in that shot? I have to keep thinking my head in the shot. Is my head in the shot? Because I want to lean over. I want to lean over and do this.